Hi, my favorite building is the Nakagin Capsule Tower, and I think I made a pretty cool 3D puzzle out of it. Check it out. Well, this model took a while, but now it's all made, and there are these 3 key points that I want to show before we move on to the actual production. The first, this is modeled using the same thickness for every single part. In this case, it's 300 millimeters. So if we scale down the model to 1 to 100 scale, every element is 3 millimeters thick. That's what I chose. And for example, if you scale it down to 1 to 94.5 scale, then every element will be basically 1/8 of an inch thick, right? So it doesn't matter what's the actual measurement, it matters that the thicknesses are all consistent throughout the project, right? Because you can just simply scale it. Second, every part is flat, and it has to be flat or else you cannot laser cut it easily. That's a no-brainer. Third, there are a lot of parts, which means that as you build up the model, the error will keep accumulating and it will basically grow out of control. For this, a lot of interlocking connections are used. Not so much for strength as for registration, so that parts fit where they need to fit or how they need to fit. And I guess point number 4, I lied, there are 4 points. It's all separated into clusters that can be assembled separately. This just helps with the whole assembly process, or should help, I hope. And from this, I extracted 2D layouts that fit on these 400 by 400 millimeter sheets. Well, as long as you use the 1 to 100 scale, of course. Different scales, different size of sheets. And all of this is available to Patreon members, by the way, just like everything else that we do on this channel. If you are a Patreon member and don't have access to a laser cutter but still want to buy this or gift it as a present to someone, just write to me, we'll figure something out. But either way, with all of this setup done, I'm going to build my own to see if it, even works in the first place. So let's go do some laser cutting. And I'll use this opportunity to also give an update on Creality's Falcon 2 Pro, a laser cutter that was sent to the channel a year ago or so. And I said in the initial video that I will do an update for it of how it's holding up in a year. So here we are. Basically, in the last year, it has been servicing around 200, 150 students in the Lund University architecture department. And it hasn't broken. In a year, I didn't need to fix anything. There was one issue where we burned through a protective glass that is at the end of the laser element, but thankfully Creality also gives you a spare part inside of the box. So a quick replacement took me like 5 minutes with a manual, and then we were up and running again. The only issue that I really see is how fast the soot and the grime accumulates. Usually with industrial grade lasers you have mirrors that guide the laser beam, and it's not the laser itself that is, moving on the gantry and doing the cutting. So those mirrors are much easier to clean. In this case, you do need to remove the laser head, dismantle it, clean it up, put it back together every month or so. Considering that it's servicing, as I said before, 150 students, really good. So generally speaking, I'm really happy with this machine, and now after a year I can really recommend it both for hobbyists as well as professionals. This year I'm planning on increasing the amount of students that can use this to around 200, and we'll see how well does it hold up year 2. What I really like doing is cutting at the highest possible speed, which means that sometimes the laser doesn't cut all the way through. It just barely, you just need to push out the elements. And this makes it so that traveling with these elements with these sheets becomes very easy. And once you arrived in the studio, you can just simply push out the elements from the sheets and start the assembly process. And sometimes you make a mistake and then the elements need a little bit more convincing. And of course, sorting of the parts once you actually get them out of the sheets is very, very important. You need to place them in the correct, arrangement, I guess, so that it's easy for you to find them and not to get lost in whatever thousands of parts you get from this puzzle. Here I should have used less glue. I thought that the wood glue will shrink as it dries. It didn't shrink enough, so you can still see the little divots, even though they become transparent, once they're dry. But still, I should have used less glue. And I was wondering if I should actually record this part for you to show, because this is part of the puzzle. Figuring out how do you put things together so that they align properly and that one part becomes a registration for another part and that everything, fits together. In this case, I will be showing a few portions of this, but not the whole picture, so that it's a little bit more fun for those of you who will be assembling this yourselves. This moment is actually quite important. There have been a few instances where I haven't noticed these splinters sticking out from the joint area, and that just made the elements misalign, which became a huge hassle later on when I needed to unglue them or unstick them, clean up the joints and glue them back together. So from now on, I am double checking every single joint to make sure that there are no splinters, no garbage in the joints. And when it comes to gluing, I actually don't use glue in areas where I see that these elements can pressure fit. So for example, these clusters of the core of the tower, they are not glued to each other, so they will be easy to disassemble later once the model is finished, and if I need to transport it or something, they will be easy to disassemble. But the staircase, for example, inside of the core is glued to the core itself, if that makes sense. So this plate in particular shows quite well how many registration marks you actually need to align everything, right? So this is me assembling the basement floor, and also on the same surface, on the same plate, we have registration for the first floor so that everything aligns perfectly. And this makes it very simple in terms of assembly because there's only one way of how things can fit together, but at the same time it's still quite a puzzle as you need to have a proper sequence of how things are assembled. Once, for example, the perimeter walls are set, it will be very, very hard to add in interior walls that, need to protrude the exterior walls or that need to intersect with the exterior walls. So this is again a part of the puzzle for you to figure out.